Blossoming morning, everyone. I am offering this craniosacral conversation thanks to the Cultural Wellness Center, who I always want to uplift and say that I'm so grateful to them. Give to the Max Day is coming up, and the Cultural Wellness Center's tagline is turning race into culture and or moving from race to culture. And I just think that's so beautiful, remembering that we are people of culture, and that when we deepen into our culture, into our sense of belonging, we can then have more to share with each other, and how beautiful it is to exchange practices, to share our pieces of the puzzle with each other, and to learn about lands from each other's cultures. And so I just want to say some deep gratitude to the Cultural Wellness Center, who encourages and supports these cranial sacral conversations, as well as all of the other work they do. I'm thinking back to the bike ride this all the bike rides this summer, and offering Craniosacral to people after they had done the bike ride in what's currently called Theodore Worth Park, but of course it's Dakota Homelands, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful team to be a part of, and I am so grateful. And it makes me want to give everybody hugs, and that's this. Topic for this week. I came across a few times this week actually on social media the Virginia said, I think, dear, what's her last name? Let me see here. Um, Quote about how many hugs are needed for survival, how many hugs are needed for health, and how many hugs are needed for growth. So let me get the proper quote so I can read it to you all. It said, so this is an older article, but it said Friday, January 21st is National Hug Day. So January 21st, Hug Day. Family therapist Virginia Satir, Satir, has said we need 4 hugs a day for survival, 8 hugs a day to keep us as we are, and 12 hugs to grow. So 4 hugs a day for survival, 8 hugs to keep us as we are, and 12 hugs to grow. And I know craniosacral isn't hugging someone the whole session. It's not professional cuddling. If people are becoming more familiar with that term, I feel like it's a big term on the East Coast. It makes me think of New York. But people are aware with these careers popping up of professional cuddlers, that hug is important and that touch is important. And so while craniosacral isn't a full hug, and who knows if it's like the heart's touching that makes the hug, or if it's the full body touching or feeling enclosed, protected. It's beautiful to get to feel with each of our hugs, what is it in this hug that's making me feel safe? But what craniosacral can do is provide that long touch, because there's so much science too about hugs, of the optimal hug length, and what shifts, what changes. I might sneeze. um, what shifts, what changes. I'm just so grateful that was a cute sneeze. What shifts, what changes with the length of a hug. And so that's really beautiful too, to think about how many hugs, the length of a hug, the quality of a hug. Is it someone who's our beloved? Is it someone we haven't met yet? So there's different qualities to hugs. And so I encourage everyone to feel what feels like the key ingredients for you with touch. But what I do love is the research that the length of a hug does matter. That's what makes me think about craniosacral. I might not, as a practitioner, be able to give someone in my sessions a full wrap around feeling, if that's the feeling, but I can and do offer length of time. So a session might be an hour and a half, for example. And so each area is getting touch for at least like 5, 20, 30 minutes. And that's so beautiful to see how the unfold when it happens. Just like with how many hugs in a day or the length of a hug, you start to see what is shifting and happening the longer or more frequently it's happening. And that's true with craniosacral as well. when I have my hand under someone's sacrum for half an hour, there's so many different moments, so many waves, then quieting, then maybe bubbling up again, so many other parts of our body suddenly coming into that awareness or shifting. So the length can be a key ingredient in touch. And I am just so grateful for the research coming out about touch. I read some studies about people who have fibromyalgia that touch can help reduce pain. So there's a lot of research that touch can reduce pain. Oh, I just had a little pop up. I hope that we're still going. We're still going. That touch can reduce pain. There's a lot of research out there. But there's a lot of research too about how touch can reduce anxiety for people and actually like existential dread, and in particular for people with low self-esteem. Research has been done that people with comfortable, healthy, high self-esteem, if they have some existential dread, if they worry about death and the state of the world, that they often, with their high self esteem, can go engage in the world to feel better. Whereas people with low self esteem don't feel like they fit into the world as it is. They don't see themselves reflected, and don't then shift out of that energy. But touch can help people um, stop isolating and reconnect again. And let me bring up that article that I was reading about that. Um, Touch may alleviate existential fears for people with low self esteem. November 6, 2013 is the title of that, if you'd like to read more about that. And then the fibromyalgia study about how touch can reduce pain is Touch the Pain Away, New Research on Therapeutic Touch in Persons with Fibromyalgia Syndrome. Um, Dennison, Barbara, MSN, ARNP, HNC, QTTT/P is the author. Holistic Nursing Practice, May 2004. That was in holistic nursing practice. So those are some research coming out. Like, I just think it's so fascinating what touch can do, right? That touch can reduce fear. I think is really important during this time, when there there is the I wouldn't even say attempted genocide at this point, because the definition of genocide is to destroy a people in whole or in part. And so the the idea of Israel is inflicting genocide on the indigenous Palestinian people right now. And for so many of us, thinking about the people with Japanese ancestry and connections with Japan, the people with Puerto Rican ancestry and ties to Puerto Rico, those groups of people. And I'm thinking too, wasn't Black Wall Street also bombed? Is that it's not just the Palestinian people, Muslim people who are reminded of fear right now. It can also be the people who have gone through bombing in the past as well. Thinking about Jewish people with the Holocaust, that there is also other people who this time of intense bombing could be bringing up so much fear and existential fear as well. And of course, we should all be doing what we can, boycotting the big three companies that are funding this idea of Israel, this colonial settler place of Israel. The big three that we can be boycotting are Starbucks, McDonald's, Disney, but also like L'Oreal, Nestle. I mean, Nestle's been doing so many atrocities against Indigenous people, taking their water and selling it back to us in bottles. So we can really all do what we can with boycotting, as well as calling our representatives to call for a ceasefire. Jewish Voices for Peace is sending out so much materials for how to show up at this moment. Take Action Minnesota. So call your representatives. Call Tina Smith and Amy Klobuchar if you're in the Dakota homelands, Minnesota, makoce. Call on President Biden, or if you just at this point think of him as Biden. Um, And so there's all these things that we can be doing, but I want to remind people too that if someone's feeling fear, touch can actually reduce fear. And so I am so moved by the literature that touch can reduce pain, because pain is still pretty misunderstood, or there's still so many mysteries to like what is pain, why pain persists or happens the way it does, what are the messages of pain. But to know that touch can reduce fears as well. And I think some of those articles were talking about experiments of like someone needing to do public speaking, and if they were given time alone in a room to do what they need, maybe like ground, calm down before going and doing public speaking, or if they were allowed to have time in the room before, like holding their partner's hand, that the people had less fear who were about to do public speaking when they had that touch. And so that's something new for me that I'm learning about the power of touch, not only being able to help us grow and heal, but to reduce pain and reduce fears, as well as specifically existential fears. So, if during this time it feels um, wrong to be watching so much death, starvation, atrocities, to be seeking out touch, I want to remind people that having a cranial sacral session or a healing touch practice during times of urgency and crisis can help you stay grounded enough to know what your role can be in this moment, and to feel deeply. The heart is a muscle, to feel and expand our capacity to feel this, and not get paralyzed, which so much violence might have the intention of doing, to paralyze people so we don't speak out. But honestly, speaking up and speaking out has been showing to be the most effective, and is why there are efforts always to silence people, because our voices are so powerful. And so I want to always uplift Indigenous people everywhere, and thinking about the Indigenous people of the Congo and Sudan who are also going through genocide. So many of the medals for our smartphones and technology are at the expense of people's lives in the places that are now called the Congo and Sudan. And so, thinking of how this moment talking about settlers and indigenous people, it can tie together so many atrocities that are happening everywhere, knowing that the the settler colonial place of Israel has surveillance companies that they sell then back to what's called the US at the US Mexican border, what's called the US Mexican border, to surveil on people who are trying to escape atrocities that the US had a huge part in causing in their homelands, and that those were traditional migration routes for indigenous people, going south and north and north and south for generations, and that now there's the surveillance. And so, knowing that what's happening right now in the idea of Israel and the homelands of the Palestinian people is affecting all of us. It affects all of us with like the police tactics that are used against um, Black communities speaking up, or water protectors, that police tactics. They get training from Israel, and the surveillance at the borders here in Turtle Island um, get the connections with Israel. And so this really is affecting the whole world. And if someone's having some existential fears, if people are having emotional and physical pain from all of this, please remember that touch is an option. Self hugging is an option, getting hugs from other people, trying to get those 4, 8, or 12 hugs from people. But also, cranial sacral is a touch practice that can feel like a hug. And I'm so grateful to Tyler Grant from Body of the Earth, who recently taught me about putting hot stones in palms during a session. Palms and forearms, back of shoulders, possibly back of neck, under heels, and that felt almost like a hug. as well during a cranial sacral session. So remembering there are ways to mimic a hug during a cranial sacral session by putting crystals, hot stones, Himalayan salt stones onto palms, back of shoulders, forearms, heels, and remember too that there is different skin everywhere, and that's always fun to have the reminder of. So, touch can remind people that we have different skin types and thickness, but also when adding heat into a session, you want to remember there are different skin types throughout. So do research about incorporating hot stone massage. It's not for everybody, and length of time the stones are there, heat, amount of heat. These are all important factors to consider for each person and each placement. So do your research, but I just want to add that I'm grateful to Body of the Earth and Tyler Grant for that teaching, as well as wanting to add that bit of information in here for the hug conversation, because it did add to a full body touch experience during a session with just one practitioner present to incorporate some of that weight. And so, thank you so much for showing up for this moment. Um, Another way to feel connected and supporting Indigenous people wherever you're at. If you live in Bede Oto Tunwe, also called Minneapolis, here in the Dakota homelands, and then the Anishinaabe and HoChunk homelands after migration. If you want to show up for Indigenous people here, there is a winter camp that got started with some yurts here in South Minneapolis, and it's called Ninokasi, Camp Ninokasi. It's spelled Nenookaasi, and they always need support through money, through friendly hellos, because there's always the risk of eviction. But right now, they are calling on people that they need porta potties at the location, and so please email Jacob Fry at Jacob JACOB dot FREY at Minneapolis, completely spelled out, minneapolismn.gov, Gov. CC Enrique Belquez at Minneapolis.gov and Eric Hansen at Minneapolis.gov. So that's ENRIQUE dot VELAZQUEZ at Minneapolis, spelled out all the way, then MN.gov. And Eric Hansen is ERIK.HANSEN at Minneapolis, spelled out, MN.gov. You can also offer money, Venmo, Ninokasi hyphen camp, or Cash App money sign Ninokasi. So, like for example, Cash App money sign NENOOKAASI. Let me see if that shows at all for people, if that helps at all. But check out social media. So that's a way to support Indigenous people here. It's all connected everywhere. So many Indigenous people to these homelands, so many Dakota people, Anishinaabe, HoChunk people I'm seeing show up for the Indigenous people of Palestine. They are connecting the two causes, saying it's the same tactics. And I know there's so much relationships among people who have gone through occupation, genocide, oppression, and that's so beautiful to see everyone show up. So this is a way too we can show up for the people who've been showing up for the Palestinian people. So I wanted to uplift that, and I also wanted to share good news, because we need wins, right? I want to say that last week the city accepted the $3.7 million required of EPNI, the East Phillips Neighborhood Institute, in order to buy the former Rift Depot site in June 2024 and start constructing the community's vision of the East Phillips Urban Farm. So, huge win. Again, it shows us that speaking up, organizing, connecting with neighbors, being able to dreaming, it is possible to have these wins. So, big win. Thank you all. I know I've updated you asking you to support the East Phillips Urban Farm, and I just want to say that a cleaner air vision, a healthier community vision is happening. So thank you all for who have supported, and it's just beautiful, beautiful news to remind us all that we can dream. So I wanted to update about that, and I talk about boycotting brands right now. I want to remind people they can go to boycott divestment sanctions movement for more information about why boycotting is important, why it's effective, and who to boycott. But I've mentioned Starbucks, McDonald's, and Disney, so I wanted to add this information that what Starbucks is doing is Starbucks is suing their union over a tweet showing support for Palestine, and Starbucks also financially supports Israel army since 2014. McDonald's offers free meals to hospitals and Israeli defense forces, and Disney pledged $2 million to Israel. So that's one of the reasons why boycotting those companies, and some of the reasons why, what their connections are with the settler state, the colonial state, the idea of Israel. And again, remember, we have to show up for all the Jewish people who aren't Zionists, who might have anti-Semitism be on the rise. So let's support all of our Muslim neighbors, our Jewish neighbors, our Indigenous neighbors. Let's support our unhoused neighbors, and just remember, moving from love is so great. And I always say those who are distant from love, who have distanced themselves or numbed themselves from love, will always underestimate love. So let's show them and remind them of the power of love together. Thank you all so very much, and I hope that you get your 12 hugs a day. And I'd love to be a part of that if you ever want to book a session. So thank you so much for supporting the Cultural Wellness Center. Remember, Gift to the Max is coming up this week. I think in particular the 16th, but I believe you can still donate all week. You can already be donating. Who are the places you care about and want to keep seeing supported? I guess maybe I also might just share some other positive news I saw recently about some funding that got brought, because it just is positive news. And I know I talk a lot about certain orgs in the description of these videos for like how to understand and reframe, reimagine these lands as the Dakota homelands and then the Anishinaabe and HoChunk homelands. And so I want to give updates to some positive news, that there was funding. The 2023 cash bonding bill HF 670 was signed into law this year, fully funding the grant requests for the Day Young Center, the Indigenous Peoples Task Force, Little Earth Neighborhood Early Learning Center, Wakan Tipi Center, Lower Fallon Creek Project, New Native Theater, Little Earth Residential Association, Division of Indian Works, and Native American Community Clinic all got funding because of organizing. And so thank you all for lifting up your voices, being your gifts. And that's why I always close these videos saying that may everybody everywhere have access and encouragement to be the gifts that they are, to be able to feel, nourish, share the gifts that you, they, we are together. Because that's the fun, right, of life, is being able to be your gifts and then see what our gifts can do in combination in relationships. So thank you so much for being your gifts. And remember, if you need touch during this time to lower fear, let's undo stories of individualism and remember, like, I'm a twin, and just so many people saying I have to like self-regulate myself. Yes, that's helpful, and then there are other ways you do need other people. And so please do seek out touch if you need to lower your anxiety, if you need to lower your fears, if you need to lower your existential fears, if you need to increase your self-esteem, if you need to lower pain and increase health and growth, please do seek out touch. Thank you so much for all the people who've ever trusted me with touch. So thank you all, and we'll talk next time.